Ask the Podcast Coach for March 14th, 2015.
Let's get ready to podcast.
Yeah! I say yeah! It is Saturday morning. It's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, everyone. Hey, we're going to get your podcast questions answered. Every Saturday. We drink lots of coffee. We get up early on a Saturday morning. We talk podcasting. And it's one of my highlights of the week. You can find us at brought to you today by Starbucks. You can find us if you are just tuning in, as we are every week at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. I am Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com, and joining me as always, the magnificent Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Super Pi Day to you. It's 3/14/15, and at 9:26 a.m. in your time zone, those are the digits that make up pi. So 3/14/15, 9:26, if you want to remember the however many digits that is. Happy Pi Day to you.
Wow.
Super Pi Day. Super nerdy.
I was going to say, man, we've just pegged the nerd meter right out of the gate.
Hey, leave it to the average guy to bring the nerd. Get your geek on.
And then I know in my last episode of Pottertainment Magazine, I was quoting Yoda through the whole thing, and I'm like, can I sound even geekier? But,
as long as you're not talking like Yoda, that might...
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah, we were, we have a question in the chat room already, which is, why is there a Blog Talk Radio player on the website? No need to click that. We we're going to use the Blog Talk Radio Direct Connect. Now, because of our fun-filled, sometimes, extensive setup that we have here, the Google Talks, the Google Hangout, the multiple co-hosts, and a call-in, it gets a little crazy. So I did the Direct Connect today, which was cool. I found it to work, and it works great, and it sounds cool. But let's see, what caused the problem? So that then sent me to the... Let's see. So I still needed to get the phone into the mixer with just giving me the phone caller. And we're going to try that next week. I just don't have the cable. So I dialed into the Direct Connect, and then I dialed into the phone to get the phone call still here. And when we did, we heard my Direct Connect on the phone. So every time I said something, there was like a half a second delay. And I went, well, that's not going to be the least bit annoying. And
you needed a double mix minus, which is actually a mix plus.
I think that's it. The double negative equals carry the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Negatives equals a positive. So double mix minus is a mix plus.
Yeah, something like that. So I'm still rearranging screens,
It's Math Saturday. Dan had said earlier in chat, this is better than Saturday morning cartoons. And remember we used to get education through our Saturday morning cartoons.
That's right.
No Power Rangers, no whatever they watch today. Where my kids are beyond that. But so this is your weekly dose of math education here on Ask the Podcast
Coach. What's sad is I can remember a lot of those jingles. 1 times 12 is 12.
Conjunction, right? Yeah.
That's exactly. What's your function, baby?
That's right. Right. Hey. I still go back to those things.
I do every now and then. I'm like, wait, 1 times 12 is 12. 2 times 12. But hey, if you got a podcast question, we have open phone lines, and you can hit that phone line. It's 347-850-8007, and we do have a field reporter this week, John from Let's Talk. I'm going to mess up his website now. Let's Talk Treasure. No, Let's Talk Metal
Detecting and
TreasureHunting.com. I believe he says it at the beginning of the clip. But he was talking last week about how he had bought that dual cable, and I had bought the dual cable as well. In fact, I got a thing from Amazon saying, how was your experience? And I'm like, I'll let you know as soon as it arrives. I haven't got it yet. But he sent this in, and we're going to tweak just a little bit of what he says at the end. And it's a kind of an interesting Let me see. Well, we'll just play it and then we'll talk about it at the end. But this is John. He's using a cable. Well, he explains it.
Doing a field report for Ask the Podcast Coach. This is a test or a review of the HOSA technology microphone cable, which is a dual XLR 3F to right angle 3.5 millimeter TRS.
No, that's not the right thing.
And right now it's plugged into the Roland R-05.
All right.
And the input level is about 25. And I'm testing the with the maximum amount of background noise. I've got the washing machine going on, my wife eating, and the dog barking.
Now,
so
can I pause here?
Right now, I've got the Roland R-05 set to a low input level. And the left channel is an SM58 made by Shure. And the right channel is an ATR 2100 made by Audio-Technica. And now I'll try adjusting the input level.
Now, if you're listening in stereo, he goes to the right channel here.
The input level is going up. I'm just talking into the SM58 right now. I'm bringing it up to 45, 50, 55, 60, 70, and maxed out at 80. So right now, this is max input level. And as you notice, there's a lot more of the sounds of the room being picked up. My wife's turned on the sink and is washing stuff out. The washing machine's going on in the background. And so you can hear a lot more background noise. So if you're trying to work in a noisy environment, maybe bring down the input level. Okay, Dave Jackson and Jim Collison, this is the review of the HOSA microphone cable dual XLR3 to right angle 3.5 millimeter TRS into the Roland R-05 with an SM58 in the left channel and an ATR in the right channel.
So the part we need to well, first of all, John, thank you so much for that. And what I've been trying to do is go behind the scenes. Oh, Jingle Cart does not let me jump to different places in the thing, because if you can, let me see if I can pull this up. If you listen to the beginning of that, what we've done is, I always use the analogy of a glass of water, right? If you fill a glass of water with, I don't know, 30% of it is full, the other 70% of that glass is air. And when you then increase, if you magnify that glass to where the glass is now, 100%, the air is also, 300 times as loud too. So at the beginning of that example, Auphonic had turned him up, but the background there was more hiss. And actually, the dishes and stuff kind of got lost in the hiss. At the end of the clip, you could hear his voice without less hiss, and thus without the you heard the dishes and the things like that. And so when he said record at a lower level, I'm like, that wouldn't be my recommendation. I would say, to me, always go up to clipping and back it off a little bit. That's usually somewhere around -6 or -12. Let me see if I can.
Dave, don't you think he meant gain? Turn the gain down, I think is what.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like,
your
okay.
gain will expand the field. I always like to think of it like a force field around your microphone, and the higher the gain, the wider that field goes out as far as what it's picking up. And if you crank your gain all the way up, you're going to get that hiss. And most microphones are going to get that hiss because it's expanded that field so wide, and like you said, it's just not great to do that. So I think if you want to get less background noise, turn your gain down and get closer to your mic.
Your mic.
In that, and you'll get less in that. You'll never completely eliminate all that noise. It's gonna pick up some of it. a gate limiter we've talked about a couple weeks ago would be one of those ways. Then to bring up, because you can't, in most boards, you can't bring your floor up, right? You can't bring the minimum sound up. That's what you need a limiter for, or a gate. So, you're still going to get that. As low as you turn that down, you're still going to hear a little bit faint. Now, when you played that, Dave, I couldn't hear any of the noises in the background. So sometimes when you're in your home studio and you've got your Sennheiser headphones on, you hear all that stuff, and it's a little frustrating, but realize people are going to listen to it in the car or on the plane, and they're never going to hear a majority of what you hear in the background, unless it's my wife, who laughs really loud and next to me. You can hear her. But yeah, so I think that's what he meant was gain.
Yeah, and Jim, can you hear this if I hit play? I don't think you can.
Hi, this is John Morgan.
Just barely.
Just barely. Okay, because it's in theory. But if I do, let me see if I can turn him up, because I'll actually then turn you up, which is the problem. So let me play this a little bit. So there's a lot of hiss there, but if I go to the end of this...
And it's clipping a little bit, too.
So there's much less hiss down there than there is...
Yeah, you're hearing that really well. I don't know if... I'm definitely not.
Okay. Well, it's one of those things where it's on the computer that you're on, so I can't send it back to you.
Yeah.
Anyway, but there is a definite notice if you listen to the beginning of that and the end of it. There's a huge amount of hiss at the beginning, because if you looked at the actual sound file, he's got this much. That stuff. He's got a very low recording.
As far as the wave file.
It's a huge difference.
Right.
So when you take that little itty bitty bit and then have to expand it to bring it up, you get a lot of hiss.
Yeah, you want to fill that cup up. In your analogy, you want to fill that cup up just as much as you possibly can, without clipping it, right? Because if you fill it up too much, it's going to overflow. And so it's finding that. It's kind of finding that balance. Nothing beats, continuing to practice with this, and I'm getting an echo back from me now.
Okay, I will.
Oh, that's weird. Now your video just went wonky on me.
You should see my screen. That is the actual file, and you shouldn't be getting a echo now.
Yeah. So you see the tiny bit to the left, and you're getting sound in, and probably it might sound okay, but to try and enhance that and bring it up, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you try and blow that out, you only have so much depth of signal, so many data bits to blow it out with. So it just doesn't give you good. Where the one on the right is a little better example of what it kind of.
Right. That's where he said I'm going to turn it up, and he went from 25 to 85.
Right. And that's turning. Sometimes that's turning up the volume, and sometimes that's turning up the gain, and you have to get a good balance between the gain and the volume. They're two totally separate things.
Yeah, in this case, he was using just the RO5, so he was just turning up the input of the actual recorder. So, but thank you, John, for that. It's a cool little thing to play with, and it's good. I'm glad to hear it works. I mean, the bottom line is he had two microphones plugged into it, and they both work going into the RO5. And so now Daniel says, I'm really quiet now. You'll hear about this on the School of Podcasting. Gremlins have come into my studio and somehow messed things up. I don't know. I need to almost unplug and go back. I'm not quite sure what's going on. I see me blinking on Mixler, so that's good.
Okay. No, we'll keep. I am getting a little bit of an echo. No, now it's gone. Okay, we're back.
But yeah, if you want to call in, that number is 347-850-8007. And again, 347-850-8007. And we'll talk about anything you want to. We always, that's half the fun of this show. You never know where it's going to go, and we have no phone lines waiting. And
Dave, do you listen to me? Are you listening in your ears? Are you hearing the exact mix that's going out to the audience, or is it a combination of something? Because I would think, this is the challenge in radio. You always have a producer, and he's listening to the mix that's going out to the audience, and so they've got some control over what the audience hears by hearing it. Is that what you're hearing in the mix?
I used to. Let me see here. If I do.
Because I think as you're adjusting that, I think if I were to give one bit of advice on live, is to make sure you're hearing exactly what you're sending to the audience, because you can come into situations, and you might want to, even in your, if you're not going live, if you're coming off of your, if you're interviewing somebody, if your levels have gotten wonky and you're not listening to that final version that's making it to the recorder, you could be clipping, or you could be too low, or you could have that disparate volume between you and your guest. So
yeah, it's interesting because at this point I'm not sure what I'm hearing. Now that I sat there and played with it, I just played with a bunch of stuff. Now I see I'm only in the left channel according to my board, which is odd.
Too many knobs, too many dials.
Lots of knobs, and there we go. If I do that, okay, now we're back in business. But yeah, I need to dissect this, and because it's
just a challenge. It's just one of those challenges. The more things you add, the more complex it gets. And I am getting an echo. You're not hearing me echo in the back? It's very faint, but
no,
like
not
it was
at all.
before. Okay. Just a quick audience. Are you guys hearing me echo? Just throw that in chat. Maybe I'm losing my mind.
Well, the interesting thing is, I was the last 3 episodes of the School of Podcasting. I actually had to go in and do some noise removal, and I'm like, why am I getting this? Just noise, your typical kind of hiss, as if I'd turned up my knobs all the way up, and it's because I had turned my knobs pretty much all the way up, and I just thought, well, it's still the new mixer. Maybe this one's just not as quiet as the other one. And there's a really cool feature on this one where you can basically say, show me my input with ignore the bass, ignore just how loud is this microphone coming in, and then you turn up your gain to where you get, green and the occasional yellow, but never a red light. And I was way down for some reason. So I turned it up. That sounded good. And then I did an interview, and to make a long story short, I'm completely distorted. And I could kind of see it, like even right now, I don't know what's going on where, you tend to peg the meter right now, and I can turn you down. It's like, what it is I'm not sure what I'm sending to the recorder. That's the problem. And it's like you said, you need to know what you're listening to. We do have a caller.
It is the drawback, before you bring the caller in, it is the drawback to a voice recorder, in that they're so small, and you don't always know, unless you spend a lot of time looking at that meter, you don't have a great indicator of what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I could plug the headphones and monitor through that. That would be a way to kind of know. But hence the joy of Ask the Podcast Coach with, a co-host and a phone in line and a YouTube and all everything else. So, ding in 3159. What's your name and what's your question? You're on with Dave and Jim.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Jim. This is John Morgan.
Hey, there he is, the man, the myth, the legend. Thank you, buddy, for sending that in. Help us with your website. It's Let's Talk Metal and treasurehunting.com, right?
Let's Talk Metal Detecting and Treasure Hunting.
I was close. Okay. So.
But your audio is sounding great. I'm listening, and I don't hear any problems.
Okay.
So everything sounds good. I mean, I don't think you have to adjust anything.
Oh, well, there you go.
How are you listening, John? Are you on YouTube or Spreaker or Mixler? How are you listening?
Let's see. I am in Google Plus.
Okay, so he's watching YouTube. Basically, he's watching the video.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sending that in.
I sent you another one, and I think what brought that hiss in is I didn't have. You know how you have to go in your menu on the Roland R5 and set up your input mode, and I had plug-in power on, and I didn't need it. And I think that's what introduced the hiss. When you set that up, you're supposed to set up for stereo. I had that right, and then turn plug-in power off because you don't need that for the dynamic mics, but for that CS10EM, the binaural microphones that I sent you in. I emailed you the review on that.
Okay.
And you need the plug-in power for that.
Ah, okay. Well, that's good to know that you have that there. When I looked at your audio file, I think the reason there was so much hiss is the volume when you were at 25 was so low on the actual recording that when you boost that up to -6, you're gonna include a lot of hiss, because if we use the analogy of the glass being 3/4 empty, when you boost it up, you're gonna boost all that. There's a lot of room for sound in that file. I think was the big reason why there was so much hiss at the beginning. Because at the end, if you listen to the beginning of your clip, we can hear you because Allphonic turned you up, but there's also a lot of hiss. And at the end, we still hear your volume. Pretty much your voice is at the same volume, but you hear kind of the background noise. But one of the things you don't hear is that, which I think kind of masked some of the background noise at the beginning of that, because you couldn't really hear the wife and the water and stuff in the background, but you could hear a lot of hiss. And I think, to me, when I looked at the audio, I went, well, there's why, because it's really noticeable. If you actually look at the WAV file, here, since you're on YouTube, let me show that again. It's a lot different from the end where you went from 25 to 85, and so at 85, the glass is almost full, not a lot of room for hiss, and so when you then run it through Allphonic, it makes it took the quiet part and made it loud. Well, it also made the hiss a little more noticeable, even though it does do its best to remove that. Let me go and throw that back on the screen for you here, John. Yeah, so you'll see here at the beginning, this is where you were, at 25. So this is a glass that's barely full, right? That's very little volume, but you need to be, somewhere up here. You've actually got a little more room you could go to, but that's okay. -3 is cool. So here you start turning it up over here, and so now there's a lot less room for hiss. And so what happens is when you take this and run it through Allphonic, it boosts it up to be as loud as the end of your file, but all this extra room is going to be hiss. So what Jim was saying...
I think there's a happy ground. If I brought it, say, 75 or something, I think that you got some of the effect of knocking out some of the background, but you don't get as much hiss. And I think if I would have tried to do it myself instead of run it through Allphonic through Amplify on Audacity, I might have come up with a little different stuff. But the big takeaway from it is, you can take two professional mics, a cable, and an R05, and not use those condenser mics, and maybe in a conference have a real lightweight, real portable kit that you can take with you for interviews in real time.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. The bottom line is to, vote with your ears, because there have been times when I've set things up based on lights, and I listen to it and go, and then I'll tweak it until I get, the sound right, and there's not as much hiss, and I look at it and go, but I'm only getting 3 lights, but in the end, if it sounds better, vote with your ears. So awesome. Well, thanks for telling. I'll have to. I know you sent me the file with the ribbon. I don't have that one ready this morning, but it's been a fun week at the Jackson household with if you were a podcast award reviewer, you should have received an email from me with the instructions on how to get your free VIP pass. Rick gave out VIP passes for those folks because we were squished for time. So that's new. But anything else we can help you with, John?
No, I know you're real busy. I just wanted to be the one who broke the ice on the phone calls. Hey, you guys, call in. Dave needs help. See you guys.
Yeah, we had 10 callers last week. I was looking at my Log Talk radio stats.
It was busy.
And we're just hammering out, which is.
There is an echo, Dave, on the YouTube for whatever. It's slight. It's like a. Well, now it's gone.
I'm going to say, and it's you.
Yeah, it's just me. But I'm gone now. So don't touch it. It's good. It's good. It's gone. Whatever you did, it's gone.
I didn't touch a
now it's
thing.
back. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Just leave it. You'll hear it in the recording back, and it's going to drive you mad.
Excellent. I love those. Yeah, well, we've had that happen with me where I've had an echo. And, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
We did have somebody sent in a clip, so we'll go ahead and play this. This is from Colin.
Hey Dave, this is Colin from Toronto. I'm thinking of starting a podcast. I know you talked about Blog Talk Radio not being particularly effective. What's your take on Spreaker, Spreaker.com? Do you think that's a good place to start a podcast as well? You talked about sound quality. What's your take on Spreaker in terms of sound quality? And is it too crowded to do a podcast on, or do you get lost in the shuffle? Can you load it on iTunes? What's your take on Spreaker? And just let me know. All right, thanks. I can be reached. My email is hello4.
Okay, I don't know if you wanted that on the air, so I'll pause it there. So, Colin, thank you so much for that. And I guess number one, it doesn't matter where you go. If you use Libsyn, Blueberry, or Spreaker, or SoundCloud for that matter, if we're going to throw in,
or even your own hosting.
Yeah, or even your own hosting. Most of those places do not tweak your audio quality. The only one I know of that does is BuzzFeed or Buzzsprout. They convert everything to mono. I don't think Podomatic does. But so that's that. Is it too crowded? Is an interesting question, because no matter where you go, again, your host is, in general, I wouldn't use Spreaker as my main website. I always use the hosting company as the hosting company, and then send everybody to my website, and then just like when you go to schoolofpodcasting.com and click on play, you're actually hearing a Libsyn file. If you go to Ask the Podcast Coach and click on play, you get a Libsyn file. If you go to feedingmyfaith.com and click on play, you're getting a Blueberry file. So it doesn't, in the end, I'm not looking at the host to bring me an audience. The last time I checked, I have to go back and look. Spreaker does have an audience over there. There are people consuming content at Spreaker. It also gets you to iHeartRadio. And in the past, I didn't like Spreaker because they changed your file name and they changed your ID3 tags. The only thing, and it's tiny at this point, that I have against Spreaker, and for the most part, I don't have anything against Spreaker. In fact, in the last 2 years, they would get most improved. The only thing they do, and I don't quite get it, is they don't offer unlimited storage. Pretty much when you get to 5 years worth of stuff, you have to start pulling stuff off the server to make room for the new stuff, which I don't get because I'm paying them a monthly fee. So I've talked with, I think his name is Francesco, is the main guy over there. And is there any way in the chat room, is there any way to send your Spreaker audience to your Libsyn file? No. Basically tell them to go to your website. If they're on Spreaker, yeah. And that's kind of the interesting thing is there's no way, like you can get Spreaker stats you can get, here we go, Stitcher stats in Libsyn and Blueberry, but Spreaker, because they are technically Libsyn and Blueberry's, what's the word? Competition. Mm-hmm. Yeah, competitor. They don't share stats, which is completely understandable. But no, I don't. Jim, you use them, right? Solely for
the average guy stuff is all hosted at Maple Grove Partners, but the Gallup stuff is absolutely 100% hosted from Spreaker, and we're not anticipating. You say that 5-year run because we're partners with iHeartRadio as well. We get that just ginormous storage space that they offer. Yeah. It's basically their pro package, and you get that for nothing. So if you get on iHeartRadio, it's taken forever for them to approve that. That's kind of a kickback or a drawback right now with iHeartRadio and Spreaker. It's just taking them forever to get those things approved if you want to be on iHeartRadio. But great, good stats, easy to work with. We've been very, very happy. You can push it to, you can their RSS feeds are you go to a manual setting and you can change them to be complete. they don't have those RSS issues anymore, and it's worked great, and that's in an enterprise environment. So, yeah, I'm a big fan. For me, I would still say, if you can, the best practice is have your own media hosting, and then use Spreaker as a secondary site, right? They've got a great app, and in fact, on the Gallup side, we've got quite a few listeners who are using the Spreaker app to listen, either live or listen to the recorded version. They're using that. They've got if you want to get an iTunes app made, if you want to get an iPhone app made for $99 a year, they'll make it for you, and it's fairly Spartan, right? I mean, it's tight and concise, and there's not a lot of options around it. I built one, and I didn't deploy it, but I built one. And but that's a great option if you want to go mobile and you don't want to pay hundreds of dollars to have somebody develop that. You can do it through Spreaker, and $99, and they'll put it on the store. So the most improved, Dave, absolutely. I would give them the most improved over the last couple of years.
Here's the thing that you can't get anyplace else. Whoa, I just was playing this while you're talking. Let me share my screen, and because this is an audio show, I'll also describe what I'm doing. I'm looking at my Spreaker stats for, I believe this is for Ask the Podcast Coach. So, I have plays here, so I can see, obviously, I'm going to assume these are Saturdays. This is last March 7th. And I can see how many likes I get. I'm not sure if that's Facebook or Spreaker likes. Sources, right? So here I can see iHeartRadio, I got 103 plays in the last 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's a heck of a lot more than I used to get. And I can see, I'm not sure. I don't use the Spreaker player, right? I actually host Ask the Podcast Coach on Libsyn. So it's kind of interesting that I'll have to look into that. But here's the one, geolocation, so I can get my how many countries, et cetera, but here's the one you can't get anyplace else, demographics. So I can see 9% of my audience is male, 25 to 34, another 9 is 35 to 41, but most of my audience is 45 to 54. And I went, oh, that's
pretty cool. Their stats are good.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that you could get, and here I can see how many downloads per episode, and again, this is just on Spreaker. My actual stats are over on Libsyn. So I was like, it's definitely.
If you're not going to host it yourself, or if you're not going to use a Libsyn or Blueberry or self-hosting along those lines, and you just have to have the player. I mean, they have a great Spreaker has a great Twitter card now, and so if you link over there, it'll automatically put the player in Twitter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's great. I think Spreaker works great on Google Plus too. That's one of the ones now I go in. As soon as I upload it to Spreaker, I click. They have a Twitter and a Google Plus sharing option, and if you share that into Google Plus, it shares the player right into Google Plus. So you get a Google Plus player. They can click play and listen to it right from Google Plus, which is what you want, right? Much like Vimeo or YouTube on for the video side. And it brings across your album art and kind of stuff like that. Right now, I think everyone's talking SoundCloud. I think everybody should. If you're not going to use those hosting, I'd use Spreaker long before I use SoundCloud. I mean, it's SoundCloud stats are kind of jankety, and they're not as good as that. Spreaker's really in this to try and make it work, and that's who I like right now. I think they've surpassed Mixlr for me. Mixlr for a while was kind of looking good, but Spreaker's done some good stuff.
Yeah, and then I know they had the thing where you can update the RSS feed.
Yeah.
I hadn't played with that, so when I was looking at it, because I had an old post when this call came in. I had an old post on the School of Podcasting where I was really bashing them because when they first had their RSS importer, it trashed your file name, it trashed your ID3 tags, and their stats weren't that great. And I actually took that post off because that's just not true anymore. Like I said, my only issue with them is, once you fill up this space, where do you go from there? And where Libsyn and Blueberry have unlimited hosting. So now, on the other hand, how many people podcast for 5 years?
Yeah, right.
That's the other thing. And that's where you throw it into a package or back catalog and you sell it or whatever it is. But the other thing I wanted to just point out that your host in the end, it's like if I go to my musician background, I never really looked at the clubs I played to bring in an audience, because in the end they didn't really. I mean, you'd have a couple regulars in there, but you had to bring your own audience. And so whether I'm on Spreaker, Blueberry, or Libsyn, it's you have to bring the audience. You might get a few more listens right now, I would say, on Spreaker versus a Libsyn, because Libsyn doesn't have a community. Blueberry has their their directory over there, and Libsyn has a directory. Now that I think about it, they're in I think Microsoft's phone. But in the end, you have to bring your own audience, and it's going to be crowded. But here's the cool thing: I just made a video for the School of Podcasting, and talking about why you should podcast. And there's a picture of Cleveland Brown Stadium. Cleveland Brown Stadium holds 73,200 people, and if there is roughly, 2,000 bloggers for every podcaster, that means if you went into that stadium, there would be 37 podcasters. So where's it going to be easier to get noticed? In a stadium full of bloggers or in a room full of 37 podcasters? And there are 1 billion podcast subscribers in iTunes. So you got 1 billion people looking for content. Where do you want to stand? In the stadium of 73,000 or in the room with 37 people? Where are you going to get noticed? And you're still going to have to battle those 37 people.
Yeah.
There are probably, 13. We're probably between 10 and 15 now podcasts about podcasting. It's got, that's
that you know of.
That I know of, yeah.
They pop up all over the place. Hey, real quick, and they go away. They come and they go. Back on Spreaker real quick. I want to be clear. I'm a little bit spoiled because once you get on iHeartRadio, you basically get their station. They have 4 levels of service: station, anchorman, broadcaster, on-air talent. And that station is $120 a month, right? And when you get accepted to your podcast into iHeartRadio, you're basically getting that station subscription level for free. Yeah. So it's super important, right? If you're not getting that, you're gonna pay the level that we're talking about that makes some sense. You're gonna pay that broadcaster or anchorman at a minimum. That's $20 or $50 a month. So if you don't have iHeartRadio, Spreaker can be expensive. And I forget about that all the time because I've got that iHeartRadio subscription in there. I don't know how long that's going to last for, or if they're going to grandfather us in, or right. Those are all risks. And when I put the Gallup podcast on Spreaker, I knew those risks going in. That's someday I may have to move them. Now I'm okay with that. The way we do our podcast, we're going to do them kind of in seasons, and I'm kind of okay with that. So, but no going in. I know podcasters go crazy about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
What was
the price again? Because we had a little bit of a Google hang-up.
Oh, yeah. So the broadcaster, which for most podcasters it would be the minimum, is $20.
Okay.
And then the anchorman is $50 a month. And the station, that's the one that you get with iHeartRadio, $120 a month.
And what do you not get when you do the $20 a month plan?
Well, you don't get you don't get the full set of stats, and I don't know what the difference between advanced and full is, but there's some obviously it's a drop back on that, and the hours are severely limited. So you get 10 times more hours on station than you do on broadcaster. So 510 hours worth of storage on broadcaster, 1,510 hours. That's funny. That's a 10. Why would it be 1,510? But 1,510 hours on Anchorman, and then 5,010 hours on Station. So all those have a 10 in them. That's kind of strange.
Yeah, see, that's why they don't have.
And then the live broadcast amount changes too. Broadcaster is 3 hours. Anchorman is 5 hours. Station is unlimited. So again, the iHeartRadio plan is the unlimited. It's super valuable. I mean, that's a great plan. So, and
it'll be interesting to see how long they keep that up, because somebody's paying that bill, And if they're every time you get in, Clear Channel's paying $120 a year.
Well,
yes.
Yeah,
there's probably a it's probably not the.
I doubt iHeartRadio is paying for that. I'm sure they've made some kind of concessions to, advertising concessions or something. I think it's probably the other way around. I think iHeartRadio is probably paying them a chunk of the advertising that they get for it. So whatever's being played. And then iHeartRadio also, Dave, I've seen some spikes in my iHeartRadio numbers, meaning I think iHeartRadio has some algorithms that's running through where they're featuring you for a while, and then you'll see this spike in your iHeartRadio numbers, and then they go away. They go down for a while. which is, I think, why it's important if on your podcast you've got ways to bring people back to your site. Back to your site. You want to connect them to you, not to iHeartRadio.
Well, I know I've emailed a while ago because we are listed as the podcast coach in iHeartRadio, and I've said, can we throw an ask in the front of that, please? And not exactly.
Well, this is the trouble,
support.
right? So what happens is you set up your feed on Spreaker, right, and then it feeds it to iHeartRadio, but I don't think that connection is refreshed very often. So you almost have to ask Spreaker, would you refresh my feed on iHeartRadio? Because it took forever. It took months for that when I changed my podcast name for that to work.
Okay, I'm going to say because that's one of those things.
Razor thin margins on this is what the deal is, right? They're probably running this with a team of 3 people because it's all being based on advertising dollars that are coming off iHeartRadio. There's no other money coming in, right? iHeartRadio doesn't charge for anything. Spreaker is not charging for anything, and so my podcast has to make advertising dollars for them on iHeartRadio for this whole model to work. Now they haven't cut it yet, which makes me think they're making some money. Or they've got venture capital money or whatever. But man, we're getting some weird audio effects here today.
We are getting some strange. This will be another fun one to edit because I look at it, I'm like last week. I actually redid it and I ran it through, I think, Auphonic, finally. I ran it through Auphonic and then basically just squished it via compressor because the phone was way down, and it's a fun show to do, record, edit. Ask the Podcast Coach is just fun all the way around. But and I know Mike Dell is in the chat room. He does podcasthelpdesk.com, and he actually his last couple episodes. Do I have that? I do have this queued up. We can do one of these.
In case you missed it, it's time for a podcast rewind.
On his show, he was talking about how morning radio is awful, and it was picked up by a morning radio crew, and they played his podcast on their show. And I guess now Mike is going to be a co-host on the morning radio show. He actually interviewed that guy. If you go over to podcasthelpdesk.com, Animal, whatever his name is, Camel Man, something. I forget what it is.
The jerk.
But he seems like a really nice guy. He's really got the heart of, he wants to bring back radio to when it was, king, with personality and entertainment and that whole 9 yards. And Mike's got him podcasting now, so that's going to be kind of cool. But I guess Mike's going to go in and sit in one day as a co-host. So he'll have to, drink about 15 Red Bulls, and because Mike's not he is slow jazz, my friend, right? You listen to Mike and he's just, he doesn't get super excited, so it'll be kind of fun. I think he even said that he's more NPR. So, Omelette, yes. How can I forget Omelette?
Are you having any issues with Chatwing today?
I had it tell me I was inactive for 15 minutes.
Yeah, well, it's not updating dynamically for me at this point. So I wonder if they've got something. Yeah, some mornings it's perfect. Other mornings it's not. We with the Gallup podcast the other day, I finally the networking, our senior networking guy overall of what we do with the internet and such. I'd been talking to him about some of our work, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to get on the network with you while you broadcast and just kind of see how this thing works from a networking standpoint." So we created a Google Hangout. We went live. First, we just did a non-on-air, right? So just a Hangout, and that actually uses one kind of protocol. And so he was like, "Oh, I see it here. Let me elevate that to a higher level, so you don't get any." You're not competing on the network with all the other HTTP traffic or all the other traffic that's on there. And I said, okay, I'm going to hit broadcast. And when you broadcast, it actually changes it to a different protocol on the web. So it's changing the protocol. And I think it goes pure HTTPS when you go into broadcast mode. And so then he found that and elevated that as well, so we got priority traffic across it. And man, that made a huge difference in the quality of our audio and our video last week when we were doing the show. And so that's one of those things too. If you're broadcasting at work, if you're starting, more and more people are starting to do this at work. I would spend some time sitting down with your network engineer and having him sniff. They call it sniffing the traffic that goes across to get your traffic prioritized, because it will. We are pushing. I mean, he was like, "Wow, you guys are pushing a lot of data when you're doing videos." And sometimes in the building, we might have 3 different HD signals going out to the Google servers to be recorded, and so it does take a lot of bandwidth. It does take a lot of juice to get this thing going if you're going to use Google Hangouts to get it done. Skype isn't too much better, although we've been doing some testing. Mike Howard and I have been doing some testing with Skype. And ironically, a point-to-point Skype connection uses more bandwidth than when you add the third person. As soon as you add the third person, all the bandwidth goes down. And they're not sending, it's like when you're point-to-point, they're sending more data, a better picture, better quality sound, those kinds of things, whatever that is. As soon as you add the third person in, it drops down almost a third in bandwidth size when you add that third person on Skype as far as what it's using. Now, we couldn't see a difference in audio or video quality when we did that, but that's one of those kinds of things where if you're in an area where bandwidth is at a minimum, or you don't have great access to a lot of good bandwidth, those are some things to consider if you're trying to do these live calls. They can be tricky to record this way.
Yeah, I actually have a consulting call today that the guy basically just wants to know. He's got 3 people on a Google Hangout who wants to bring Blog Talk Radio in. And it's like, okay, here we go. Depending on what he's doing, it's kind of interesting to see if he wants, he's got this PreSonus sane mixer. I mean, it's just, I get the feeling I know John Lee Dumas uses some sort of PreSonus thing, and he's just got in the gear. Are you guys seeing me freeze up as well?
Yeah, I'm hearing you freeze up too. Am I freezing up for you in this?
No. Let me close a tab or two. I know that's the one thing I really hate about Chrome is for every tab you open up, it seems to chew up more memory, and so I'm closing things as we speak, which is often bad. This is usually we wait till the end of the show for everything to lock up. I see I'm frozen again, which is great fun.
It's skipping a little bit on you. You might want to try decreasing your bandwidth on your camera. So drop that down one. On Google Hangouts, you have the ability, if you go up to the toolbar up on the top, and I'll just say this for our audio listeners as well. If you go up to the toolbar at the very top of the screen, a black bar will appear. Then you'll see some bars that look like the bars on your phone. They go from small to large. And if you select that, in most cases, by default, Google Hangouts are set with audio with full HD on, right? It's an auto HD. It tries to do some bandwidth sensing. It's the algorithm for that is not always great, and so sometimes if you're having video problems, if you just decrease that, and I'll decrease mine too, just so I'm equal with you, Dave. Our video quality will obviously drop some, but it will help. Sometimes it helps the connection. It not bouncing back and forth between HD, especially if you're teetering in that bandwidth area where it's like, oh, there's HD, oh no, there's not, oh now there is, oh no, there's not, no there is, no there's not. That's not great. So now if you shut it down one, take it down a click or one, you can also crank that all the way to the left and it'll go audio only. So it'll completely cut off your camera and allow you to do audio only interviews. So you can use Google Hangouts on air. They don't have to be video. You can just shut the video off and go audio only.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat room. Bill Conrad wants to know, using Adobe Audition, what processes, conditioning do you use to edit and clean up your sound? Well, number one, we've kind of talked about this today. Get the best recording you can first, because in the end, before, like I said, the last couple weeks I've had to do noise removal, and once I get things right, I usually don't have to do noise removal because there isn't really enough. If I want to, I can go through and spend the 2 minutes to do the noise, whatever it's, restoration is what it's called in Audition. I can do that, and other than that, I put the channel with me. So I basically have my music on one channel, I have me on the other, and then I have the whole whoosh sound on the School of Podcasting in another channel. Which, by the way, if you listen to last week's show, I forgot to mute. So halfway through an interview, it just whoosh out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, good. So I use multi-band compressor, but I don't have it at 100%. I think that does a little overboard. And then on the master channel, I have it do hard limiting at 2-6. And what I need to do is over at audiomasters.com. What is Mike Russell's little audition school over there? I know he's got a tutorial. It's probably on YouTube as well. How to get to -16 LUFS using Audition. I know he's explained that somewhere. So I should probably go and look at that as opposed to just slamming things into -6. And then what I also do is anytime I use compression, I look at, like, because I can jack up the volume of a channel to where it's almost peaking and then have a hard limiter. That's going to really affect your sound. It gives it a bassier sound, but it also makes it a little muffled because you're really making that compressor just smack things down. Whereas if I have everything almost up to like -6 on the volume on the channel, and then the master channel is limiting at hard 6, it doesn't have to do a whole lot of limiting. It's only for those times when things go a little left of center. Because I did, now this morning, I recorded a thing for Blog Talk Radio. So now if you were to listen to something on Blog Talk Radio of this show, you would hear Dave Jackson say, Ask the Podcast Coach is brought to you by the School of Podcasting.com. Use the coupon code BTR when signing up at the School of Podcasting. I recorded that. I did the total, like, maximum radio voice guy with the multi-channel compression, and I just squished the heck out of it. So I boosted it up a little more and had the compressor really just kick it down, and it did. It gave it that big bassy radio voice guy thing. So you can kind of tweak it, but those are the two I use. Basically, I use a little compression, and I use a multi-band compressor, and if you're using Audacity, check out Chris's dynamic compressor, and you can find that over at the audacity-to-podcast.com. Daniel has that over there, and a little noise reduction, and hopefully I don't need it. But other than that, and then in some cases on the Jeff Brown interview, that was another one where I really started noticing the noise because I took Jeff's side and my side, and when I made it mono, there was a lot of hiss. And so I went through there, and this was in Sony SoundForge, and I'm kind of surprised that Audition doesn't have one. I used a noise gate to, when I wasn't talking, to basically take it down to nothing, because that's when I started going, what is going on with my stuff? Because I'm hearing stuff, and again, if I was doing a trucker podcast, I wouldn't have to worry about this, but I'm sitting in a quiet room in my office doing this, which is half the problem. When I listen in the car or things like that, it's probably nothing to worry about. I've told the story before that on my first podcast, I used to obsess over the sound of my fan on my computer, and I would talk to my audience about it. I'm really sorry, and I got a noise gate, and finally somebody wrote in and said, Dave, I have no idea what you're talking about, and I wish you would move on, because they couldn't hear it. Because they're listening in the car, they're listening on the treadmill, and things like that.
Yeah, your audience isn't too excited about hearing you apologize, to be honest with you. Most of the, you know, and this is a thing I'm guilty of, and I need to stop doing it. They also don't want to hear about how busy I am. They don't care, right? They've come to hear your content, and so when we come on and we're like, well, I was hoping to do this, but I've been so busy. Guess what? Everybody's busy, right? Everybody's got a life. You're not the only one who is, you know, doing this and doing that. And Dave, you and I are both super busy, but people really don't want to hear about it. And I've caught myself several times saying, well, blah, blah, and it's been so busy. And that, I think, is like a big no-no with podcasting. Again, they don't care. They're like, so what? You're here. Now bring the business, right?
Exactly.
Let's stop whining about who killed who, you know, those kinds of things. So.
Yeah, I see in the chat room, Mike Howard says Mike Russell has a great YouTube channel about Audition. He hasn't posted recently. Of course, the number one reason people quit posting, that's right, babies.
Babies.
They are, and he's got a new one. And I did want to, if your show is less than 40 minutes, I think is the thing. I really like Zoom.us. There's only one thing I hate about it, and that is you have to download an exe file to join the meeting. And I'm like, what year do they think this is? I'm surprised, like, virus protection doesn't go nuts when you're downloading an exe file. But anytime I use Zoom.us, the audio is awesome on that thing. But the free version, I think, only lets you broadcast for 40 minutes per meeting. And the
for free. You can buy for
For free.
$5 a month or something like that. You can
Yeah,
buy the upgrade and go unlimited. So
Yeah.
that's very reasonable on Zoom. It's very,
Yeah.
very reasonable. And I love the fact that it records both the audio with the video and just an audio file. So, and you get this if they now, okay, this might be a situation if they just had a broadcast way like a Google Plus does. And Mike Howard says in chat, at the JPEG to RAW studios that they have that Mike has there, he has poured hundreds of hours and hundreds of dollars into using vMix, where you could use Skype or you could use Zoom to broadcast those kinds of things out. But the average podcaster is not going to spend that money or is not going to spend that time to necessarily figure out how to get all that to work. So, yes, while we hate the quality of Google Hangouts on air, they're still the easiest way to broadcast. I mean, it's still, that is, find me an easier, cheaper way to do it, and I will absolutely do it. And there isn't one, because you can't get cheaper than free.
And then, exactly. And then I can host my video for free.
Right.
Deborah from last week, I believe, says, "What does compression do to the audio?" Well, that's a fun one. In a nutshell, the super, and this is where all the audio files are like, but basically, it makes the loud stuff quieter and the soft stuff louder. In a nutshell. I mean, that's it in like 10 words or less. It does so much more. There's more to it because you can say how much to squish it when it gets too loud and how much to boost it when it gets too soft. But in a nutshell, that's what it does. There's a program called Auphonic. We talked about it last week that basically does that, and it removes hiss, kind of. We listened to John's clip today. That actually had been auphonicked. That's how much hiss was in that file, that the anti-hiss tool had still kind of left some in there. But Jim, anything else you want to throw in on compression?
No.
That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Use as little as you can. The more you monkey with your file, the weirder effects you're going to get in there. So record it right the first time as much as you can, and then use those tools if you have to. But oftentimes the closer you get to native, the better off you are.
Yeah, that's really it. The best. I was playing this week when I was first troubleshooting my trouble. I try to isolate stuff. So I took the mic jack out of the mixer and went right into the H5 and said, let's see what it sounds like from microphone to that. And that's when it dawned on me that I used this via insert jack. So I'd have to rewire. And that's when I went, hold on. I just went back to square one. But yeah, try to go anytime you're troubleshooting anything.
Isolate. Start pulling cables. Just get everything out of there.
I mean, if I wanted to introduce a noise right now, and I'm sure this will happen because I've done it. I've got the iPad plugged in. Let me turn the iPad up, and I'm going to plug in a USB cable into. I have one of those power strips that has a couple USBs at the end. So here's my USB cable, and as soon as I plug this in to this, oh yeah, doesn't that sound lovely? So it's just one of those weird things that isolate stuff. You'll be amazed at the little things that add noise and hiss. And that's. I actually moved the School of Podcasting this past week. It took me like 2 years to do it, but we actually have a new platform, and I'm so happy because I'll still be tweaking that as we go along. But one of the next things is to rearrange this space, and because I've got my DBX over here, I've got the mixer right here, my phone is right there. Anytime I get any kind of weird noise that just like. The other day I was sitting there and all of a sudden I got my headphones on, I'm listening to music through the computer, and all of a sudden I hear this grr, 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 and I'm like, and I just moved my phone and put it over here and it went away. So I don't know what the deal is, but anytime you have a lot of electrical stuff, my goal was to get, like, I have a power strip on my desk. Not a good idea in general because
Get that stuff away. Get it down and away.
Yeah.
The other thing is monitors. They put out a huge electromagnetic field around them. And as I look at this, so sitting on my desk right now, I have these two big monitors that I'm looking at. I have two big shelf speakers that sit underneath them. I have so much electromagnetic stuff going. Surprisingly, I'm not dying of cancer right now. Right? But I've got all this electromagnetic stuff, and then right next to it, I have my mixer. And I keep thinking, that's probably not very smart, right? I mean, sound waves and are all affected. The analog and digital video or waves are affected by this electromagnetic field. So sometimes you just need to have to get that stuff away from. You got to spread it out, and that's why it's important to get really good shielded cables as well.
The other thing I see the chat room is talking about Auphonic. One thing, there is an online version which is free for up to 2 hours, which I've been using for my podcasting for free experiment. And they do have a desktop version, which I like their desktop version. It isn't quite as flexible in terms of uploading to other sites and things like that. But the one thing I always like to know, let people know, is if you convert to MP3 using the Auphonic desktop version, I don't get it because you're paying for it. They use the Layman encoder. And I'm like, come on, I just paid whatever it is, $80 for the software. Can't you pay for the
pony up for the right
Fraunhofer? Yeah. And you also can't do a mono file to MP3, which I'm not anyway because they're using the Layman encoder, but I usually just keep everything as a WAV file, throw it through Auphonic, and then run it through either iTunes or Audition or something that's using the Fraunhofer to convert it to an MP3. But wow, we're running out of time already.
The time is done. We're at the end for the week.
So next week we'll have the Direct Connect maybe. Eventually, I want to kick the tires on all the Blog Talk Radio stuff. Like actually, their chat. It's going to be sad the day we use the Blog Talk Radio chat instead of Chatwing, but
I may revolt on that one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So that's coming down the pike. But it's yeah. So this week we're close. I just need a cable and some time to test. So
yeah, test.
In the event my wife is watching, she is fine. She had some kind of outpatient surgery this week, and she's fine and dandy. But in the event she's watching from the hotel or from the hospital room, hi honey.
Oh, she's there.
Yeah. So
I doubt it.
So
and why would she?
She's really bored in the hospital. Coming home today, which is good. But in the event she's watching, hello.
No HIPAA violations. Let's just end it there.
Yeah. But Jim, where can everybody find you?
Out at theaverageguy.tv, and some folks asked today about the Gallup stuff. Just go out to coaching.gallup.com if you want to see what we do from an enterprise standpoint.
There you go. And you can find me at schoolofpodcasting.com, the new and improved schoolofpodcasting.com. Use the coupon code ASK, and I think I'm just going to make it ASK. I guess I need to make it Ask 20 because it's in the past episodes. Ask 20 will save you something on when you sign up. That's the whole fun thing. Now I have to take all the old coupon codes and bring those over. It's the joy of having a podcast. That stuff lives on forever.
It does. It's forever. Podcasting's forever.
That's it. So we will be here next Saturday, as always, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. AskThePodcastCoach.com/live. Thanks for listening. Thanks to the chat room. We'll see you again next week. Take care, everybody. And I'm getting smart to keep that mic. Now here in my headphones, that music was blasting my face off.
No, it wasn't too bad here.
And here on the recording, it was making the lights blink. But yeah, today I'm gonna retrace everything. I didn't change anything. Yeah. But apparently Gremlins have come in and done something weird.
We got to get you hearing on the feed out. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I basically, because right now, if you put a gun to my head, I'm not positive what I'm sending to you. It used to be the sub. In fact, I think it's still the sub, but that can't be because then you couldn't hear me. Apparently, I'm sending you.
Some boards have that ability to send the mains to the monitor, and that if your main out is what's being fed into the broadcast, then that's what you want to listen to. But
yeah, no, I know
it's not.
Yeah, I'm sending you either an auxiliary or a sub, because there's a or I don't know, something, but it's the monitor. That's it. That's the part that messed me up on this. I have an auxiliary send and a monitor send, not an auxiliary 2. When I first got this board, that was one of the confusing things. But I will. That's the other thing. I have this sitting behind a desk, and my here it's going to be dark, but I mean here's my messy desk. So here's that, and the problem is it's got a wall behind it. So seeing behind the mixer, I kind of have to crawl into that space. And yeah, look at my mess. My desk is just a disaster area right now. And then you've got the mountain, tons of water over here. I think I've got some Mountain Dew on the floor. It's just I need to clean up here. It's getting when you have to like crawl through the space to get to your desk, that's not good.
Whenever I do that, I get a nice sneeze for like a week because you stir up all that dust. And we had to move some last weekend. I moved some stuff around. Was it last weekend? I moved some stuff around here in the studio, and man, I didn't get done until like 1:30 in the morning, and then I had to be up at 6 for work the next day. That was really bad, but I sneezed all night.
Yeah, somebody mentioned I used to have this one labeled iPad. I took mailing labels, and that is kind of odd. Because I used to have normally there'd be a white mailing label that said iPad. Yeah. So I knew what cable to plug it in. It must have fallen off because it's hilarious. Like, who uses mailing labels anymore? I pay all my bills online, and I got them, and they're like 2 years old, and they're barely sticky anymore. And I used to have them on the board. The old board had, it was like Dave, Jim, phone kind of thing, so I always knew what was what. But that's always fun. So
it's always a challenge, especially the more stuff you add in, the more complex the setup becomes. And I've found too, you get that, like you demonstrated here a few minutes ago. You'll plug something in that's not plugged into the rest of the setup, and then you get that nice in the background, and you're like and you got to do the ground fault, whatever.
Yeah, the ground exactly.
It's like, well, I don't want to do that. So it's always a challenge.
Yeah, and that's just where, I saw a guy in, it might have been the Facebook group or something like that, and he has an RE320, and he's thinking about getting a Heil PR40. And I asked him, and I said, is somebody in your audience complaining about your audio? Because I'm like, that is, whether it's better or worse, I'm like, surely your audio sounds fine. It's weird how we keep finding, compressors and limiters and microphones, and there comes a point when you're like, yeah, that's good. You got brake, gas, and steer. You can drive now. Just right. Drive. And I think that's part of. I have a great comment that I'll probably throw into the school of podcasting where a guy was saying how podcasting is a state of mind, because he said he was writing a paper for college, and he thought about it, and it was about, okay, who's my audience? And what am I really trying to say? And I need to get to the point in the paragraphs, and I need to have wow content. And he goes, it's really kind of a state of mind. And I was like, that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. But we do kind of always, I think at the heart of us, we always want to constantly improve. I think that's part of the podcaster's mindset. So we're always open to new stuff, and then we like technology. So, like, I still don't know a whole lot about Audio Boo, but I heard where they hired Russell, is it Branson? No, Russell something. He's a comedian from.
Yeah, he's big. He's big on their front page right now.
Yeah. Well, he's big. He's got a new thing on Netflix. He's been in movies. I guess he's a huge comedian, especially in the UK. He's actually pretty funny. I watched his special on. He's crazy. He's just crazy. Nuts.
He's insane.
And he's one of those guys. He's a little bit reminds me of George Carlin, that a lot of his jokes aren't jokes. It's just stuff that you go, well, yeah. Why is that? Like George Carlin is like, why are we passing laws to ban the toy guns, but we're keeping the real ones? And you kind of go, why is that? It's kind of like, wait, is Ken Blanchard in the chat room? I don't want him to. He's gonna quit listening.
To all of a sudden be like, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, in fact, Audio Boo is now Audio Boom.
Yeah. Yes.
And yeah, if you go to audioboom.com right now, you'll see he's got a couple podcasts out there that they're working with him on. They were very, very kind to me in providing another. Yeah. I basically have their highest level of a service. They approached me and said, hey, we'd really like to put you on Audio Boom. It was Audio Boo at the time. And so I took him up on it, and it's awesome. I've that's the one we mentioned last week. I use the audio. They have a really sweet jukebox player that I use on my page, and for that alone, I think it's worth it. It just looks good, branding's good, type deal, and so that's one of those services that, And Dave, this week, let's see if I've got it here. I got contacted by Kingston, and I don't do a lot of this kind of stuff. I mean, but Kingston contacted me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to review this 5-in-1. It's a 5-in-1 mobile companion, and you can. It's a hard drive and a battery and a Wi-Fi hotspot and all kinds
Wow.
of things. Yeah, all in one. And you can you load your movies to it. And this is what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually load podcasts to it, and I'm going to leave it in the car. And then when I'm driving, I'm going to stream the podcasts from here. I'm going to try and set it up so every time every time I come in the garage, it'll update. So we'll have to see how it goes. There's some stuff I need to figure out about it. But as a podcaster, they said, hey, we'd like to send you one of these, review it, drop it on your site. And I'm a tech podcaster, so that's what I do. And but I don't ask for a lot of those things. I'm not one of those guys. I don't feel like I need to go. I have the time to go out and ask for stuff. I got enough stuff to do. But they were like, hey, can we send you one? And then they sent me some, so I could test it. They sent me some little SD card and a little.
Nice.
These guys are on the ball. They sent me everything I needed. A little flash drive and a little SD card for it. These aren't terribly expensive.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for it to come out, but I got interviewed by a local Cleveland business magazine this week about podcasting and how it can be used to.
Cool.
And he originally was looking for me. He goes, "Do you know any other Cleveland podcasters that are using it for their business?" And I'm like, "I know Cleveland podcasters, not that are using it for their business." He's like, "Well, how are you using it for your business?" So it kind of turned into a story about me, and I'm like, "Oh, well, that's kind of cool." Here's another fun update. This is always fun to on the Podcast for Free show. I'm using that one host. I've made, you ready? 73 cents.
No, that's more than I would have thought.
For 4,729 downloads. So let's see what that calculates per CPM. So 73 divided by 4,729 would be cost per thousand-ish. That can't be right. It says 1.54. It's like some sort of scientific number. It's so little. It's a lot. I know when I did it before, it was 0.00. It was before it was 0.0005.
The goal there is to podcast for free.
Yeah.
And not make. I mean, that's
and
not
make money. That's what I always tell people. I'm like, hey, don't get mad when you make 73 cents because you don't have a monthly fee.
Right. Yeah. No. Right on. I'm going to be on Be Smart on Air on Monday night. So Nilo, he's actually one of our listeners out here. He was out earlier. I think he's out, but he's in Sweden, and so he's having me on to talk about using Google Hangouts and Google Hangouts on Air for your podcasting. So Niilo, his last name A-L, I couldn't pronounce this to save my life. I'll have to ask him. A-L-H-O-V-A-A-R-A. We don't put two A-A's together. We don't put two A's together in the English language. But he's from Sweden, and going to be on that Monday night, so it should be fun.
Cool.
Yeah, I like doing that.
All right, we're officially off Blog Talk.
Oh, okay. Whoa. Something went, we had a little audio.
We have issues, yeah. I'm like,
yeah. I like doing the interviews.
So that's why I'm trying to close anything I can. And we're back.
Yeah, now the video's out of sync.
Is it really? Okay.
Well, it's back. It's back now. I think we're back.
That's always fun.
Some days are good, some days are bad. You know, it's funny. You'll have 5 or 6 or 7 in a row, and you're like, oh, good, we're all set. And then for whatever reason, in the Google data centers, it's not working well, or your bandwidth's bad, or my bandwidth's bad, or we're getting throttled by somebody, or something along those lines. And then it just sucks.
Yeah.
You're like,
Do we have anybody in the chat room that's using Spreaker for free? Because somebody asked what kind of stats do you get for free, and I'm assuming it's just usually a free account. It's just download.
Yeah, they're pretty limited from what I understand. You get basic. They call it basic stats. Start broadcasting now with our free speech plan. 30 minutes for live broadcast, 20 hours of audio storage, free basic stats, and ads on your personal page. That's the free. If you're going to pay, I don't know if I would recommend, especially if you're trying to keep the costs down. I could not justify having $120 a month plan for what I get from Spreaker, right? I couldn't justify it.
I was thinking about that. I'm like, that's probably why they don't have an unlimited plan, because they do have people using. No, you'd still have a limit per. They'd have to go to the Libsyn Blueberry route. You'd have to limit the amount that you do per month, which is still the same. I just don't understand why they're not storing it forever. I'm like,
well, there is, and I think if somebody's going to reach that spot, they're probably going to work out a deal with you. But
that's me. That's what I want to find out.
MediaFire's that way too. When I interviewed Eric from MediaFire, and I said, why 1 terabyte, right? Why not just unlimited? I mean, 1 terabyte is basically unlimited, right? Most podcasters are going to have trouble filling up a terabyte of in their lifetime. I mean, that's a lot of space, right? Yeah, you have to really try. And Eric, he says to me, no, it's Derek is who it was. He says to me, Jim, there's got to be limits. You can't just, if somebody needs more than that, we will absolutely work with them to get that there. But it's just not a good business model to be unlimited.
Well, that's where you get into the SoundCloud, where they let you upload like insane amounts of. They say unlimited, and it's like, but the limit is like 33 gigs. It's something big per day. It's they really open up the door to where you could really, really hurt them. And I'm like, man, that's a bad business model.
It's terrible. You need to have some limits, right? That's just one of those kinds of things. It's like, because you don't want somebody trying to save the whole internet, on your server, because that's not good for your customers.
Yeah, I've been using Dropbox. I now save my episodes. What I do, because I've been playing with streaming audio, to try to get into the iTunes radio thing. I've been doing that for years, but I'm playing with another service. So I save when I export my file, I'm done. I've got the intro, outro. I export to WAV, and I throw that in Dropbox. That way, if I ever want to go back, or if I mispronounce Jeff Brown's website, I can go back and fix it. And I have that version. And then I save it to 128 to throw it on Spreaker. And then I throw it. I keep bouncing back and forth, but usually I put stuff out at 64 because I keep forgetting that the rest of the world doesn't have high-speed internet. So, but I did started doing that. I started putting my WAV files in Dropbox. That way, if I ever want to go back, I've got the bestest version. And I realize that 99% of the time, I'm never going to go back and touch that file.
Yeah. Well, what I love is when we talk about storage, we do this, we have a home server show that I do as well. And whenever we talk about storage, and I just made a statement, the average podcaster probably is going to have a hard time filling up 1 terabyte. I always make that mistake because I know somebody always says, well, I got 4 terabytes of data. Somebody always does. It's just the way it is. Most people don't have that kind of, they just don't. They don't have that kind of those kinds of needs, and there's always going to be groups of folks who have it, who are going to, for whatever reason, specialized needs. But I think for most people, for most podcasters, I do a lot of podcasts and I keep a lot of data, and I am just now to the 500 gig mark, and that took a lot of work to get there. I mean, I think that's 4 years of podcasting. It'll probably take me another 3 or 4 years to get there, and by the time I do, all those limits will have probably changed. 1 terabyte will have turned into 10 terabytes, and some of those kinds of things. So I think for most people, it's pretty amazing. And what's interesting on the MediaFire, we've talked about this before. They have this crazy rollover minutes or rollover bandwidth, right? They give you 10 terabytes of bandwidth every single month for up and down loading, and if you don't use it, they credit it to your account, and you get it rolls over.
Keeps going, huh?
I think I have 80 terabytes of bandwidth stored up now at MediaFire that I could use. So if people say, well, what if your podcast gets popular? Well, 80 terabytes is a lot. It's a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm just using it for videos. So I've moved all my videos out to MediaFire. They host all the both a small and a large. And here's an odd thing, Dave. My small video, so maybe about 200 meg worth of video, right? It's really small. 320 is the res on that thing. It's now caught my audio downloads, from a download standpoint. So I was doing
Interesting.
about 1,000 or so audio downloads, and all of a sudden that small for one of my shows is doing 1,000 as well. Even with that being said, I'm not using my 10 terabytes a month. In fact, it's rolling over 7 or 8 terabytes are rolling over every single month. Be interesting to see if there's a cap on that as to how much they let me store up.
Yeah, this mountain of terabytes you have behind you.
I know.
Yeah, I've tried to. I tried them for video and at the school of podcasting, and the buffering thing was driving me nuts.
I don't know why that's doing that for you. I'm not having any. I don't have any.
Issues?
Now, because you said that to me, and so I went to my phone and watched a few videos, and I have not had any trouble with it. So I don't know what. There was a time. So when I first started using them, 7 or 8 months ago, I think. There was a time when I was having trouble getting their files to validate in PowerPress. So you know how you copy and paste the link into PowerPress, and then you hit validate, right? And it goes out and you get the green bar. There was a day when that would never validate. It would work. The link would work if I saved it, but it was struggling. I've noticed recently validates every time. So that could have also been some throughput on their side, or the way they do validation, or the way it hits the server, or some of those kinds of things. But I've noticed recently I haven't had any problems with their stuff. I don't encourage. The other thing I don't do is I don't put the public link for it. I don't want them to stream it. This is for download, right? If they're going to stream it, go to YouTube. That's the best place to get it streaming. I just want them to download it.
So you go into the share, then you go to the advanced in the bottom left-hand corner and grab the direct link.
There's 3 options. The very top one is download. I copy and paste that, put it into PowerPress, and for $25 a year.
Yeah.
Man, I think Daniel uses it as like cold storage. It was cheaper than Amazon S3 for cold storage. So I think Daniel moves a lot of his stuff, or has moved a lot of his stuff out there. Just let it sit.
Well, I was using it for especially for the school podcasting. I was sending videos like, hey guys, we're getting ready to move, so definitely check your email, which is fun because then people have to check your email to see the video that says please check your email. That's the whole thing. I still have people that probably have no idea that we've moved. And then I gave them like a tour, here's the new stuff, that whole 9 yards. Because it's actually, the systems I'm using is really cool. It now has a progress bar, so if you're watching the tutorials on PowerPress and you're 3 through 5, it'll show you where you're 70% done, and then you've got a little place over on the right-hand side where you can take notes. It's a lot like Udemy. If you've ever taken a class on Udemy, it's just not Udemy, and you get to keep more of the money. And actually, it's a lot like Udemy now. I think about it because they host the videos.
What's the name of it?
The system I'm using is called Value Add-on, which is a really strange name for a membership site. But man, it was. I moved the whole site in about a week from what I did before, which took me a year. I was using OptimizePress, and it was one of those where just because you can have all these features doesn't mean you need them. And it reminded me of I may have told you the story before. Excuse me. Where when I was first getting into video games, I bought a race car game. And I just wanted to, brake, gas, steer, go around the curves, that whole 9 yards. And before you could even race, you had to set up your car, and you had to set the angle of the spoiler and how fat your tires were, and all this other. I just want to race, and so it reminded me a lot of that. Where for the membership site, it just I don't need these details. The fact that I can change every single thumbnail and this, and I'm like, I just want to upload a video, have a nice play button, make it look good, and that's it. And so I went from using OptimizePress and Wistia for my videos to this whole thing, and their videos are on Amazon S3. So from what I've seen, it's pretty reliable streaming. Done. And now it ties in. I've switched my affiliate program from my own to I'm now using a company called JVZoo, which has a huge. I haven't unleashed that yet because I want to make sure the site's exactly the way I want it. But let me throw this in the old chat room. Because again, it's still kind of it's still kind of beta in the fact that it's got School of Podcasting members in it, but it's not really officially. I mean, people can sign up for it. What the heck is that? Okay,
super frustrating that chat is not updating in real time for me.
Yeah, that is the new front page. And what's cool about this is once I get the membership done, everything's good. I'm going to nuke schoolofpodcasting.com, install a fresh WordPress, and put everything there that's the podcast and the pages, but all the membership site will be off that site completely. That's the other thing. I don't have to worry about bandwidth, and I basically sent all that traffic to a completely new area, and I just I have to trust these people now that they're going to be up there and running. That's the fun part, the little trust thing, but it's pretty sweet.
I really like, I've been working with this kid for the last 4 or 5 years, and he started this Maple Grove Partners, and he's got a plan he's got some plans that are really, really generous with both space and bandwidth. And I basically don't have to ever worry about my bandwidth consumption because he just doesn't. I'm gonna pull up his stuff here real quick. It just doesn't matter on his plans, and he's got a plan that starts at $10. And gives you 50 gig of storage, and
nice.
Basically unlimited bandwidth, and you get a couple FTP accounts and some databases if you want to set up. You could, for $10 a month, you could set up a bunch of WordPress sites on there and run it. And so that's worked nice for me. I've grown into this. He started hosting me just offline, 5 years ago, and it's just as a project, and then he turned it into a business. So it's been pretty cool. MapleGrovePartners.com. Yeah, kind of cool.
Dan in the chat room says he's trying to upload his image. Am I logged into the School of Podcasting?
Where?
At the School of Podcasting. I think if you go into my account, let me see here, and go to Preferences. Oh, I see. Yeah, there is no place to add an image. I will throw that at the boys. That's the one nice thing about it. They are kind of still. It's only been around, probably 6 months. But it's got the backing of JVZoo, so I know they're not going anywhere. But yeah, I will let them know. It's like, hey, why can't the users do that? I also liked if they could make a directory. That would be awesome. That's the one thing I liked. What do you think of Slack so far? We've been playing with Slack. A couple different people have been playing with Slack, the app that is kind of like an internal chat system, and you can sync your Google Docs. It's actually more for a team, but because I thought about using that for the School of Podcasting members, but I'm like, we talked about that last week with Facebook. You kind of need some place where people already are, and I don't want to send somebody. Maybe if everybody starts using Slack, I'll think about it. But I do love it as a team where you could. The New Media Expo, I'm going to beat them over the head next year. For next year, we have to use Slack. We have, or something like it, because it would make that whole process so much easier.
You can use HipChat too, right?
I've never played with HipChat. What is HipChat?
HipChat, same idea. Internal instant messaging.
Yeah,
you know what? Since Michael sent me the invite to Slack, I haven't gone back to it. So it must not be. It's just a few of us on there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. I see what it does. Not sure.
I think you need to install the app to have it make any sense.
Yeah, because when I'm on my phone, it lets me know. I can see. I need to move because right now the app is like on page number 6 of my phone, so I never see the updates. But
yeah, I think you really got to. That's really good English, Jim. You really have to use the app and have it notify you. Like anything, you need notifications. Otherwise, nothing really works if you don't.
Yeah, I see Devorah says it doesn't work for project management. Now that's where you could use because it does tie in with Asana, which I believe is asana.com. That is a really cool tool for task management. That's also free. Infusionsoft, Bill. The nickname for Infusionsoft is Confusionsoft. From what I understand, that's another one. Infusionsoft has so many features, and many of them you'll never use. And it's also expensive. It's meant for big shot smarty pants people. And I know there comes a time when you can use that, and it's basically for people that want to make a sales funnel and really go that route. I just know anytime I looked at it, I went, wow, too rich for my blood. I'll stick with Aweber and it's kind of nice, but it is a case where all your eggs are in that basket then. There's your email, there's your affiliate program. I know John uses it, John Lee Dumas, but I don't know that he uses it for his membership site. I forget what he's using for Podcasters Paradise. It was some kind of off-brand kind of thing. But as I look at the time, I do need to skedaddle.
Yeah, it's time to get a snack. My breakfast is gone. It's time to go up and toast.
But as always, chat room, thank you guys for hanging out. Jim, thanks for another fun-filled week.
Yeah, no, it's always good. Always good to be on. I appreciate it.
And I'll kick the tires during the week and see what's going on, and we'll get the kinks worked out.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
it was okay.
We got it done. Not a lot of phone calls today, but we got it done.
Yeah, so awesome. All right, my man.
All right, man.
We'll
Have a good week. We'll see you.
See you. Bye-bye.